Oxygen Blast technical seminars are an Intertech production. For instructor-led .NET, Java, and XML courses, visit us at www.intertech.com.
Now here's the other big change that took place with 4.0 as far as C# goes. For better or for worse, C# now has the ability to sort of opt in to scripting-like functionality, right? The CLR that we've known and loved for years has a little brother called the Dynamic Language Runtime. Okay, this is a new service. And what the DLR is going to basically be doing is evaluating these little packets of data called expression trees. And an expression tree is sort of a agnostic request that a code base is trying to make. And that expression tree will be unpackaged and evaluated at runtime. Now, why would we ever need to do this? Well, the places that you'll probably find this dynamic language runtime support really helpful are when you're going to be doing a lot of reflection. You can really simplify your reflection code. And it's also going to be a way to simplify how we communicate with COM objects. And I'll show an example of that too. Now, there are some other uses of the DLR that I'm not going to go through here. If any of you happen to use some dynamic languages like Iron Python or Iron Ruby, it makes it easier to communicate with those code bases as well. Now, how do we package up this expression tree in C#? Well, we have a new keyword called dynamic. And when you declare a piece of dynamic data, you can assign it anything you want, and everything is going to be ignored by the compiler. Remember, this is all going to be evaluated at runtime. Now, similar to an implicitly typed variable, we can go ahead and make an assignment on the code line that declares the piece of dynamic data, but you're free to change it after the fact if you want to, okay? Even if you change it to a completely different type of data. So here, we can see that I'm going to call some methods off of string, toUpper, but this one right here compiles just fine as well. And you can see that I've typed in the incorrect case down here. Well, this will be not checked until runtime. So the compiler just says, oh, you're dynamic data, I'm just going to leave you alone. And even this would compile just fine. But clearly, system.string does not have a method named foo, right? So where would you ever possibly use this in a real situation? Because I'm sure you can agree, just defining something as dynamic for the heck of it is a pretty poor idea, right? If you don't need to opt into this service, then don't bother. But anytime you are working with COM libraries, and maybe today at your company you're not actively programming a lot of COM yourself, but there are many very important object models out there, all the Office products, that are only accessible through the COM layer. Well, take a look at this signature of a COM interop library method, right? This is what we would normally have to go through if we did not use these new dynamic services. So notice all of these different parameters to this one method. Everything is, an actual optional COM parameter, but before we had optional parameters in C#, we would have to specify type.missing, type.missing, type.missing all the way through this signature. And that got really old really, really quick. Well, that problem is taken care of automatically, right? Because now we can just simply omit it if we don't care about it. But even nicer is that whenever you reference a library, a COM library in a 4.0 project, what you'll find is that any variant data type declared in the COM library is going to automatically be mapped to dynamic. And that's going to really clean up the kind of code you have to write. You don't have to worry about a whole bunch of extra casting. You don't have to worry about these weird hidden COM methods you have to call to use an indexer. You can just directly program against the model. And that will, again, really simplify your code base. So let me show you a little demo that will kind of illustrate how this can make life a lot nicer. So let me just go over here to Visual Studio. And let's take a look. Yeah, right here. I already have it open. Okay, so this is a little COM interop example where I'm communicating with Microsoft Excel, but I'm going to do it in two different ways. I'm going to do it using the original no dynamic approach, so that might be what we would do for a 3.5 project, and then I'll show you how the same can be done with this dynamic keyword. So let's first of all look at the no dynamic approach. Let me just kind of pull out some of the ugly bits here, right? And I think maybe it'll be helpful if I go to two views. And then up on top here, I'll go to the with dynamic. So I'm going to scroll to right about here. Okay, so notice a couple of things clean up right away. When I'm adding things to my workbook, notice I don't have to specify that dreaded type.missing anymore, and that comes from the optional parameters. But even better, okay, look at how much nicer this is here, right? Let's say I want to put in some headings in the cells. What this application does is it basically just takes this list and it exports it out to an Excel spreadsheet. So down here, I want to define some column headings, right? If I don't use these dynamic services, look at all the extra casting and levels of indirection I have to go through to set that up. So here would be kind of the old approach. Here's the use of dynamic up here. And we also see some similar cleanup down yonder. Again, notice how much cleaner it is to go ahead and do auto formatting. I don't have to specify all those type.missings. We can also see it down here as well, right? So just a much, much cleaner way to program. And if I were to actually go look here at the interop library, let me just go ahead and select something for you to look at. Let's see, I'll go here. There we go. So if we start to kind of scroll through, there we go, there's one. Notice how we have the dynamic keyword in place of what used to be a COM variant, or, you know, in the .NET layer, an object. So this is what's really kind of simplifying a lot of our programming nowadays. And of course, notice here, specifying optional arguments, right? So if I don't specify something here, it's going to default to type.missing for me. Now, one other piece I want to show you real quick here too. And let's see, where did I put that? Oh, that was back in the slide deck, I think. Let me go back over here. Yeah, let's take a look at this too. I also mentioned that use of dynamic services can really simplify when you're working with any kind of reflection service. So let's take a look at two approaches here to dynamically create an object using reflection. And again, we'll do it with and without the dynamic keyword. So here over on the left-hand side is kind of like the traditional approach of how I could work with reflection to basically create an object on the fly. And then if I want to start to set properties, notice I have to work with property infos. If I want to start to invoke methods, I have to do a method lookup and call the invoke method. And that's not horrible. I mean, that's certainly a lot better than it used to be in the world of COM. But now look how much cleaner it is over here if I go ahead and declare things as dynamic, right? Now I can just directly make assignments to properties, and I can just directly make function calls against my dynamic piece of data. So look at all the stuff that kind of got hidden from view. All this goes away, and that goes away too. Now, like any shortcut, there's certainly a couple of gotchas. Remember that anything declared dynamically completely skipped over by the compiler. So when you're typing in dynamic data, you're just going to see a little pop-up appear in Visual Studio that basically says this is going to be ignored. So if you have any typo, if you have any sort of misspelling or extra spacing or the wrong parameters, that's all going to blow up at runtime. That's going to throw an exception. There's actually this language binder exception that'll be thrown. So that's the obvious drawback. But if you use things with a good measure of discipline, you can really simplify the amount of code you have to type.
For more free learning resources and to see the latest lineup of our instructor-led .NET, Java, and XML courses, visit us at www.intertech.com.